The dust swirled around her slight body as two men grabbed her by the arms and threw her through the saloon doors, her threadbare dress catching on the wooden frame before she tumbled hard onto the dirt street. Logan Carmichael had just dismounted from his horse outside the general store, his weathered hands still gripping the reins when he witnessed the violence unfold before him. The sun beat down mercilessly on Fort Kearny, Nebraska, that scorching July afternoon in 1872, and the woman lay crumpled in the street like discarded refuse while townsfolk turned their heads away in practiced indifference. Logan stood well over 6 feet tall, his broad shoulders straining against the buckskin shirt that stretched across his muscular chest. Long, dark hair fell past his collar, streaked lighter from months spent in the high country, and his sun-bronzed face bore the harsh lines of a man who had survived winters in the mountains that would have killed softer men. His powerful arms, corded with muscle from years of trapping and hunting, tensed as he watched the woman struggle to push herself up from the dirt, her hands scraped and bleeding. The saloon keeper, a portly man with greased hair and a stained vest, stood in the doorway with his thick arms crossed over his barrel chest. "And do not come back here looking for handouts, you worthless creature," he shouted at her retreating form. "You cannot pay, you do not eat, simple as that." Logan dropped his horse's reins and crossed the street in long, purposeful strides. His boots kicked up small clouds of dust with each step as he approached the woman who was trying desperately to gather her dignity along with the torn hem of her dress. She could not have been more than 22 or 23 years old, with auburn hair that had come loose from its pins and now hung in tangled waves around her dirt-smudged face. Even through the grime and humiliation, Logan could see the delicate beauty of her features, the determined set of her jaw, despite the tears that threatened to spill from her green eyes. "Madam," Logan said quietly, extending his calloused hand toward her. His voice carried the rough edge of someone unaccustomed to lengthy conversation, yet held an unexpected gentleness. "Let me help you up." The woman flinched away instinctively, her eyes wide with the wariness of someone who had learned that kindness often came with cruel strings attached. But something in Logan's steady gaze, the honest concern etched into his weathered features, made her hesitate. Slowly, trembling, she placed her small hand in his massive palm. Logan lifted her to her feet as easily as if she weighed nothing at all, his strength evident in the effortless motion. Up close, he could see how thin she had become, her collarbone jutting sharply beneath the threadbare fabric of her dress. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, speaking of sleepless nights and gnawing hunger. Her dress, once a respectable blue calico, was faded and patched in multiple places, the seams straining from repeated mending. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse and barely audible. She tried to pull her hand away, but Logan held it gently, examining the scrapes on her palm with a deep frown. "You are hurt," he observed, his dark eyes lifting to meet hers. "Come with me. I have a room at the boarding house just down the street. You can clean yourself up there." The woman shook her head quickly, alarm flooding her delicate features. "No, I cannot. People will talk. I've already caused enough trouble." Her words tumbled out in a rush, desperation threading through each syllable. "I should go. I need to find work, find somewhere to sleep tonight before dark falls." Logan glanced up at the sun, still high in the cloudless sky, then back at the woman before him. "Where have you been sleeping?" he asked bluntly, though not unkindly. Color rose in her cheeks, visible even beneath the dirt. "Wherever I can find shelter," she admitted, her voice dropping lower. "Behind buildings, sometimes in the stable if the owner does not notice. I had a job at the saloon, washing dishes and cleaning, but I fell ill last week. Missed 3 days of work. When I came back, the owner said I had abandoned my position and he had already hired someone else. He let me sleep in the back room for a few nights, but this morning he said I had to pay rent or leave. I have no money. I spent my last coins on medicine when I was sick." The story poured out of her as if a dam had broken, each word heavy with exhaustion and defeat. Logan listened without interruption, his jaw tightening with each detail. He had spent years in the mountains, away from civilization and its casual cruelties, preferring the honest danger of nature to the calculated meanness of men. But standing here in the dusty street of Fort Kearny, watching this young woman tremble with hunger and shame, something stirred in his chest that had lain dormant for longer than he cared to remember. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then lifted her chin with a flash of pride that poverty had not quite extinguished. Katherine. Katherine Grant. My friends used to call me Kate, but I have not had friends in quite some time. Miss Grant, my name is Logan Carmichael. I came down from the mountains 3 days ago to sell furs and restock supplies before winter comes. I have a room at Mrs. Henderson's boarding house that I am paying for whether I use it or not. Right now, I would appreciate it greatly if you would allow me to escort you there so you can wash up and rest. You look like you are about to collapse right here in the street. Katherine stared at him, searching his face for the deception she had learned to expect from men who offered help. But Logan's expression remained open, patient, waiting for her decision without pressure or demand. The simple honesty in his weathered face, combined with the trembling weakness in her own legs, finally broke through her resistance. I do not understand why you would help me, she said quietly. You do not know anything about me. Logan's mouth curved into the barest hint of a smile, transforming his harsh features into something unexpectedly warm. I know you have been treated badly when you deserved better. I know you are hungry and hurt and need someone to show you basic human decency. That seems like enough to me. Come on now before you fall down. He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, Katherine placed her hand lightly on his forearm. Even through the buckskin shirt, she could feel the solid muscle beneath, the coiled strength of a man who had carved his existence from unforgiving wilderness. They walked slowly down the wooden sidewalk, past businesses whose owners watched from windows with varying degrees of disapproval and curiosity. Mrs. Henderson's boarding house sat at the end of the main street, a 2-story structure with a wide front porch and lace curtains in the windows. The elderly proprietress, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, stood sweeping the porch when Logan and Katherine approached. Her eyes narrowed as she took in Katherine's disheveled appearance and the protective way Logan guided her up the steps. Mr. Carmichael, Mrs. Henderson said carefully, her broom pausing mid-sweep, I run a respectable establishment here. Yes, madam, I know you do, Logan replied evenly. That is why I've been staying here. Miss Grant has had some difficulties this afternoon and needs a place to clean up and rest. I would be obliged if you could bring up some hot water and perhaps some food to my room. Mrs. Henderson's lips pressed into a thin line, but something in Logan's steady gaze and calm demeanor seemed to satisfy her concerns. She had housed the mountain man for 3 nights now and found him to be quiet, respectful, and prompt with payment. His reputation, heard second-hand from men who traded at the fort, spoke of a man who kept his word and minded his own business. I will bring water in 10 minutes, she said finally, and I have beef stew left from lunch that I can heat up. But Mr. Carmichael, I expect proper behavior under my roof. You will have it, madam, Logan assured her. I give you my word on that. He guided Katherine inside and up the narrow staircase to the 2nd floor. His room sat at the far end of the hall, a modest space with a single bed covered in a faded quilt, a washstand with a chipped basin and pitcher, a small table with 1 chair, and a wardrobe that held his few possessions. A window overlooked the back garden, letting in afternoon light that painted golden squares on the worn wooden floor. Katherine stood just inside the doorway, suddenly uncertain now that they were alone in the private space. Logan seemed to sense her discomfort and deliberately moved to the far side of the room, putting the width of the space between them. He pulled the chair away from the table and positioned it near the window. Please, sit down before you fall down, he said gently. I'm going to step into the hall while Mrs. Henderson brings the water. You can wash and make yourself comfortable. I will stay outside until you tell me otherwise. Katherine's eyes widened with surprise, and something else, something that looked dangerously close to tears. You're giving me your room, she asked, her voice breaking slightly. But where will you sleep? Logan shrugged his broad shoulders, the movement rippling through the muscles of his back and arms. There is a stable behind the boarding house. I have slept in far worse places than clean hay. Do not worry about me, Miss Grant. Just rest and eat when the food comes. We can figure out everything else later. Before she could protest further, he stepped into the hallway and pulled the door closed behind him, leaving it open just a crack. Katherine stood frozen for a long moment, unable to process the unprecedented kindness she had just been shown. The tears she had been holding back finally spilled over, tracking clean lines through the dirt on her cheeks as she sank into the chair by the window. True to her word, Mrs. Henderson appeared minutes later with a large pitcher of steaming water, clean towels draped over her arm, and a bar of lavender-scented soap. She knocked softly before entering, her expression considerably softer than it had been on the porch. "The water is hot, dear," she said, setting everything on the washstand. "I will bring food up shortly. There's a clean nightshirt in the wardrobe that Mr. Carmichael said you could use while your dress airs out. He is a good man, that one. Rough around the edges, perhaps, but good where it counts." "Thank you," Katherine managed to say through her tears. "Thank you so much." Mrs. Henderson patted her shoulder awkwardly, maternal instinct overriding her usual stern demeanor. Life has a way of being cruel to women, especially those without family or fortune. But sometimes, if we are very lucky, someone comes along who reminds us that kindness still exists in this world. You rest now, and we will sort things out in the morning. After Mrs. Henderson left, Katherine removed her filthy dress with trembling fingers and used the hot water and soap to wash away days of grime, sweat, and shame. The simple act of being clean again brought fresh tears, these ones mixed with relief and gratitude. She found Logan's nightshirt in the wardrobe, a massive garment of soft cotton that hung on her slight frame like a tent, but felt more luxurious than the finest silk. She had just settled back into the chair, her wet hair combed through with her fingers, when another knock sounded at the door. Mrs. Henderson returned with a tray bearing a large bowl of beef stew, thick with vegetables and meat, fresh bread still warm from the oven, a pat of butter, and a cup of hot coffee sweetened with precious sugar. Katherine ate slowly at first, her shrunken stomach protesting the sudden abundance, but the food was so delicious and her hunger so deep that she eventually finished every bite. The warmth spread through her body, bringing with it a bone-deep exhaustion that made her eyelids heavy. Logan remained in the hallway, his broad back against the wall, listening to the quiet sounds from within his room. When Mrs. Henderson emerged with the empty tray, she paused beside him. "She ate everything," the older woman reported quietly. "When is the last time that girl had a proper meal, do you suppose?" "Too long," Logan replied, his voice rough with suppressed anger at the world that could let someone starve while others threw away food. "Is the stable suitable for sleeping?" "You will do no such thing," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "There's a small storage room off the kitchen with a cot in it. I use it sometimes when I'm not feeling well and do not want to climb the stairs. You will sleep there tonight, and we will discuss more permanent arrangements in the morning. That young woman needs help, Mr. Carmichael, more than just one night of charity." Logan nodded slowly, his dark eyes thoughtful. "I know. I'm working on a plan." Inside the room, Katherine had moved to the bed, unable to resist the siren call of the soft mattress and clean sheets. She told herself she would just lie down for a moment, just rest her eyes briefly, before insisting that Logan take his room back. But the moment her head touched the pillow, sleep claimed her with an intensity that spoke of weeks of exhaustion finally catching up. Logan waited another 30 minutes before carefully opening the door and peering inside. He saw Katherine curled on her side in his bed, her damp auburn hair spread across the pillow, one hand tucked under her cheek in a gesture of childlike vulnerability that made his chest tighten with unexpected protectiveness. He moved silently across the room, his mountain-trained stealth allowing him to approach without disturbing her sleep. Gently, he pulled the quilt up over her thin shoulders, tucking it around her carefully. In sleep, with her face relaxed and the worry lines smoothed away, Katherine looked younger and heartbreakingly fragile. Logan found himself studying her features in the fading afternoon light, something stirring deep in his gut that he had not felt in years. He had chosen the solitary life of a mountain man deliberately, after watching his parents' ranch get taken by land speculators and his father drink himself to death from grief. He had learned that caring about things, about people, only led to pain when they were inevitably lost. But something about this woman called to him, some quality of spirit that refused to be broken despite everything she had endured. She reminded him of the wildflowers that grew in the highest mountain meadows, delicate in appearance, but possessing the strength to survive harsh conditions that would kill tougher-looking plants. Logan backed out of the room quietly and closed the door. He found Mrs. Henderson in the kitchen and accepted her offer of the storage room cot gratefully. but sleep did not come easily despite his own exhaustion. His mind churned with thoughts and plans, possibilities and problems. He had originally intended to spend only a week in Fort Kearny before heading back to his cabin in the mountains. Winter came early at high elevation, and he needed to prepare, to lay in supplies and firewood, to check his trap lines and make repairs to his shelter before the first heavy snows. It was a hard, lonely life, but it was his life, and he had been content with it. Now, lying in the narrow cot with moonlight streaming through the small window, Logan found himself questioning that contentment. The memory of Katherine's hand in his, small and fragile, yet somehow trusting despite everything, stayed with him. The way her eyes had searched his face for deception and found only honest concern. The proud lift of her chin even as her body trembled with weakness and hunger. By the time dawn light began filtering through the window, Logan had made his decision. He rose, washed in the kitchen basin, and dressed in clean buckskin pants and a fresh shirt. Mrs. Henderson was already up, stoking the fire in the large cast-iron stove and preparing breakfast for her boarders. "Good morning, Mr. Carmichael," she greeted him. "Coffee is almost ready." "Morning, madam. I need to ask you something important." Logan poured himself coffee from the pot on the stove, the bitter heat focusing his thoughts. What would it cost to keep Miss Grant here for a month? Room and board, 3 meals a day, and perhaps some decent clothes? Mrs. Henderson raised her eyebrows, but answered promptly. "For a month with meals and laundry, I would normally charge $30. But for that young woman upstairs, I will do it for $25. She needs building up, Mr. Carmichael. She is half-starved." Logan nodded, reaching into the leather pouch at his belt, where he kept his earnings from selling furs. He counted out $30 and pressed the coins into Mrs. Henderson's weathered palm. "Take the full 30. Use the extra for whatever she needs. Clothes, shoes, whatever you think appropriate. Can you help her with that?" "Of course I can," Mrs. Henderson said, her stern features softening with approval. "You are a good man, Logan Carmichael. But what happens after the month is up? That girl needs more than temporary charity. She needs work, a way to support herself with dignity." "I know. I'm thinking on that. For now, just help her get strong again. We will figure out the rest as we go." Logan spent the morning at the general store, purchasing supplies and making arrangements for additional goods to be delivered to his mountain cabin before the first snow. He was examining a new steel trap when he heard familiar voices behind him. "Did you see that mountain man pick up that Grant woman yesterday?" one male voice said, dripping with amusement. "Carried her off to his room like she was something valuable instead of the worthless mouth she is." "That girl has been nothing but trouble since she arrived in town 6 months ago," another voice agreed. "Always putting on airs like she is too good for honest work. Her father lost everything gambling, you know, and then went and got himself killed in a bar fight in Omaha, left her with nothing but debts. She is lucky anyone gave her work at all." Logan's hands tightened on the trap he was holding, the metal biting into his calloused palms. He turned slowly, his considerable height and breadth making the two men take an involuntary step backward. They were townsmen, soft around the middle with pale skin and manicured hands that had never done real work. "You want to repeat that?" Logan asked quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "I want to make sure I heard you correctly before I respond." The first man, a store clerk with slicked hair and a weak chin, paled visibly. "We did not mean any offense, Mr. Carmichael. We were just stating facts about the girl." "Facts," Logan repeated, his dark eyes cold as mountain stone. "Here is a fact for you. Miss Grant has more courage and dignity in her little finger than either of you possess in your entire bodies. She has survived circumstances that would have broken softer people, and she did it without whining or taking the easy path that some women might choose when desperate. You will speak of her with respect, or you will answer to me. Are we clear?" Both men nodded quickly, eager to escape Logan's intimidating presence. They scurried away, whispering between themselves and casting nervous glances back over their shoulders. The store owner, a grizzled man named Thompson who had been watching the exchange, chuckled and shook his head. "You're going to make enemies defending that girl, Carmichael," Thompson observed, wrapping Logan's purchases in brown paper and string. "Not that I disagree with you, mind. This town has not been kind to her, that is certain, but people are set in their ways, and they have already decided she is not worth their consideration." "Then people are fools," Logan said bluntly, counting out payment for his goods. Thank you for the supplies, Thompson. I will be back before I head to the mountains. Logan returned to the boarding house to find Katherine awake and sitting in the small parlor off the main hallway. She had washed her dress and hung it to dry, still wearing Logan's nightshirt with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders for modesty. Her hair was braided neatly down her back, and some color had returned to her cheeks after a night of rest and a morning meal. She stood quickly when Logan entered, clutching the blanket tighter. Mr. Carmichael, I cannot thank you enough for your kindness last night. I slept more soundly than I have in months, but I must return your room to you now. I have imposed on your generosity far too long already. Logan held up a hand to stop her. Miss Grant, please sit down. We need to talk. Katherine lowered herself back onto the settee, her green eyes wary but trusting. Logan took the chair across from her, his large frame making the delicate furniture seem even more fragile by comparison. I spoke with Mrs. Henderson this morning, Logan began, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I've paid for you to stay here for the next month, room, board, and meals. Mrs. Henderson will also help you acquire some proper clothing and whatever else you need. Katherine's eyes went wide, and she shook her head immediately. No, I cannot accept that. It is too much. I have no way to repay you. I'm not asking for repayment, Logan said firmly. Consider it helping someone who needs help. Nothing more, nothing less. But I cannot just take charity, Katherine protested, her cheeks flushing with emotion. I have some pride left, Mr. Carmichael, even if I have little else. Let me work for you somehow, earn my keep. I can cook and clean, mend clothing, anything you need. Logan studied her thoughtfully, seeing the determination in her expression, the need to maintain her dignity through contribution rather than passive acceptance. He respected that, understood it on a fundamental level. All right, he agreed. I will be in town for another week before I return to the mountains. During that time, I could use some help organizing supplies, mending some of my gear, perhaps cooking a few decent meals before I go back to my own rough cooking. Would that be acceptable? Relief flooded Katherine's features, straightening her spine and lifting her chin. Yes, that would be very acceptable. Thank you for understanding. When can I start? This afternoon, if you are feeling up to it. But first, Mrs. Henderson is going to take you to the seamstress to get some proper clothes made up. A woman cannot work effectively in a nightshirt and blanket. A smile broke across Katherine's face, the first genuine smile Logan had seen from her. It transformed her entirely, lighting her green eyes and revealing dimples in her cheeks. Logan felt his breath catch slightly, unprepared for the impact of that smile. I would like that very much, Katherine said softly. I promise you will not regret helping me, Mr. Carmichael. I intend to prove myself worthy of your faith. Logan, he corrected gently. If we are going to be working together, you should call me Logan. Then you must call me Kate, she replied, extending her hand formally. It seems we have an arrangement, Logan. Logan took her hand carefully, mindful of the strength in his grip. Her hand was still scraped from yesterday's fall, but she gripped his firmly, sealing their agreement with a handshake that felt like something more significant than either of them was ready to name. Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway, bonnet already tied, and a purposeful expression on her weathered face. Are you ready, dear? Mrs. Wilson at the dress shop opens at 10, and I want to get there early before she gets busy with other customers. Kate stood, still wrapped in the blanket. My dress is not quite dry yet. We will bring it along and you can change at the shop, Mrs. Henderson said practically. Come along now. Logan watched them leave, Kate clutching her damp dress and casting one more grateful glance back at him before disappearing out the front door. He spent the next several hours sorting through his supplies and making lists of what still needed to be done before his return to the mountains. The mountain cabin he called home sat in a remote valley high in the Rockies, accessible only by narrow trails that became impassable once heavy snow fell. It was primitive, but solid, built by his own hands from local timber, with a stone fireplace and enough space for him and his winter stores. He had trap lines scattered throughout the surrounding territory, checking them regularly for beaver, mink, and fox whose pelts he sold each spring to traders. It was a lonely existence, but Logan had convinced himself it was what he wanted after watching his father spiral into despair and alcoholism following the loss of the family ranch. Trust nothing, depend on no one, expect nothing from life except what you could take by your own strength and skill. That had been his philosophy for 8 years, ever since he turned 19 and headed into the mountains alone. Now, at 27, Logan found those beliefs wavering. Kate had awakened something in him that he thought had died with his old life, the desire to protect, to provide, to build something more than just survival. The need to hear someone else's voice in the morning and know he was not entirely alone in the world. Dangerous thoughts for a mountain man, dangerous feelings for someone whose life depended on absolute self-reliance. Kate and Mrs. Henderson returned in the late afternoon, laden with packages and talking animatedly. Kate had changed into a simple dress of deep green cotton that brought out the color of her eyes. It was modest and practical, but well-fitted and flattering, showing her figure now that she was clean and properly dressed. Her hair was styled neatly, pinned up with only a few loose tendrils framing her face. Logan, who had been chopping wood behind the boarding house to earn his keep for the storage room, straightened from his work when they appeared. Sweat gleamed on his bronzed skin, his shirt discarded in the heat, revealing the powerful muscles of his chest and arms. Wood chips clung to his buckskin pants, and his long hair was tied back with a leather thong. Kate stopped short at the sight of him, her breath catching audibly. She had known he was strong, had felt that strength when he lifted her from the street, but seeing it displayed so openly, the raw power in every line of his body affected her in ways she had not anticipated. Heat rushed to her cheeks and she quickly looked away, flustered. Logan noticed her reaction and reached for his discarded shirt, pulling it on quickly. "Sorry, madam, I did not expect you back so soon." "No need to apologize," Kate said, her voice slightly breathless. "We were gone for hours. Mrs. Henderson was very generous with her time and advice. The girl needs several dresses, a proper coat for winter, and decent shoes, Mrs. Henderson reported briskly, though her eyes twinkled with amusement at Kate's obvious reaction to Logan's appearance. "Mrs. Wilson is working on 2 more dresses and a coat, but Kate has enough for now to be presentable." "Good," Logan said, setting down his axe and wiping his hands on his pants. "Are you ready to start work, Kate? I have some leather gear that needs mending, and I was hoping you might cook dinner this evening. Mrs. Henderson has kindly given us use of the kitchen." "I would be happy to," Kate agreed, relief at having a task to focus on evident in her expression. "What would you like me to make?" "Whatever you know how to cook. Surprise me." Kate spent the next hour in Mrs. Henderson's kitchen, taking stock of the available ingredients and planning a proper meal. She had learned to cook from her mother, before illness took her when Kate was 16. Those had been good years, before her father's gambling addiction spiraled out of control, before debt collectors came calling, before everything fell apart. She pushed the memories aside and focused on the task at hand, choosing to make fried chicken with cream gravy, mashed potatoes, green beans cooked with bacon, and biscuits. It felt wonderful to work with quality ingredients again, to know the food she prepared would be eaten and appreciated rather than scraped into slop buckets. Logan appeared in the doorway as she was rolling out biscuit dough, having washed up and changed into clean clothes. His hair was still damp from washing, curling slightly at the ends where it touched his collar. He watched her work for a moment, struck by how natural she looked in the domestic setting, how right it seemed to see her moving confidently around a kitchen. "That smells incredible," he said honestly. "I have been living on hardtack, dried meat, and whatever game I can shoot for months. This is going to be a real treat." Kate smiled, pleased by his appreciation. "Cooking is one thing I know I am good at. My mother taught me everything she knew before she passed. She used to say that food prepared with care and attention nourishes more than just the body." "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was," Kate agreed softly, her hands stilling on the dough. "She held our family together through some hard times. I wish she had lived long enough to see me grown. Maybe things would have turned out differently." Logan moved further into the kitchen, leaning against the counter but keeping a respectful distance. "What happened to your father? The men at the store mentioned he passed, but not the details." Kate's expression clouded, pain flickering across her delicate features. "He could not handle my mother's death, started gambling heavily, drinking more, lost our home, our land, everything we owned. He kept saying he would win it all back, that one big score would fix everything. Instead, he got deeper and deeper in debt to men who do not forgive debts." She paused, pressing the biscuit cutter into the dough with more force than necessary. 6 months ago, he got into a fight with one of those men at a saloon in Omaha. Someone drew a gun, and my father was killed. I was left with nothing but his debts and the clothes on my back. The men he owed money to took everything else. I came to Fort Kearny because I heard there was work here, a chance to start over where no one knew my family's shame." "That is not your shame to carry," Logan said firmly. "You did not make his choices. You should not have to suffer for them." Kate looked up at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Tell that to the people in this town. They learned about my father, about the debts and the gambling. After that, I was tainted by association. No respectable family would hire me. The only work I could find was at the saloon, and even that was taken from me the moment I showed weakness by getting sick. This town is full of small-minded people more concerned with judgment than compassion," Logan said, anger threading through his voice. "You deserve better than what you have been given." "Why do you care?" Kate asked, the question bursting out before she could stop it. "Why are you helping me when everyone else turned away? What do you want from me in return?" Logan met her gaze steadily, seeing the fear beneath the question, the expectation of demands and conditions. "I want nothing from you except the work we agreed on. As for why I care, I am not entirely sure myself. Maybe because I know what it is like to lose everything and have to start over with nothing. Maybe because I spent 8 years running away from caring about anyone or anything, and I'm tired of being so alone. Or maybe I just could not walk past someone who needed help and pretend I did not see." The honesty in his words, the raw admission of his own loneliness, touched Kate deeply. She had been alone for so long, surrounded by people yet isolated by their judgment and her circumstances. To hear someone acknowledge their own isolation, to admit vulnerability instead of hiding behind masculine pride, affected her profoundly. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for seeing me when everyone else looked away, for treating me like a person instead of a problem to be ignored. I will never forget what you have done for me." "You do not need to thank me, Kate. Just finish those biscuits so we can eat. I am starving." The light moment broke the tension, and Kate laughed, the sound surprising them both with its genuine warmth. They ate dinner together at the small table in the kitchen, with Mrs. Henderson joining them and keeping up a steady stream of conversation about town gossip and local happenings. The food was as delicious as it smelled, and Logan ate 3 helpings of everything, praising Kate's cooking until she blushed with pleasure. After dinner, Kate insisted on washing the dishes while Logan worked on mending his leather gear in the corner of the kitchen. The domestic scene felt oddly comfortable, as if they had been doing this for years instead of barely knowing each other for 2 days. They fell into an easy rhythm, working in companionable silence broken by occasional conversation. "Tell me about the mountains," Kate said as she dried the last dish. "What's it like up there?" Logan looked up from the leather he was stitching, his expression softening with something that might have been longing. "It is hard and beautiful and unforgiving all at once. In summer, the meadows fill with wildflowers that stretch as far as you can see, colors so bright they almost hurt your eyes. The air is thin and clean, and you can see for miles from the high peaks. In winter, the snow gets deep enough to bury a cabin if you are not careful, and the cold will kill you if you make mistakes." "It sounds lonely," Kate observed, hanging the dish towel to dry. "It is," Logan admitted, "especially in winter when the trails close and you cannot get out even if you wanted to. There are days when the only voices I hear are my own and the wind. But there's also freedom up there, a kind of peace you cannot find anywhere people gather. No judgments, no expectations, no politics or social rules. Just you and nature, testing yourself against the elements and proving you can survive." "Is that why you went there? To escape people?" Logan set down his sewing and considered the question carefully. "At first, yes, I was angry at the world, at the men who destroyed my father, at the system that allows the strong to prey on the weak without consequence. The mountains seemed like a place where things were simpler, where strength and skill mattered more than money or connections." "Do you still feel that way?" "I thought I did until 2 days ago," Logan said, his dark eyes meeting hers across the kitchen. "Now I'm not so sure anymore." The weight of his gaze, the implication in his words, made Kate's heart beat faster. She looked away first, overwhelmed by the intensity of feelings that were developing too quickly, too powerfully. She barely knew this man, yet she felt drawn to him in ways that defied logic or caution. The next week passed in a pattern that became increasingly comfortable. Kate took over cooking duties for the boarding house, her skill in the kitchen earning Mrs. Henderson's enthusiastic approval and praise from the other boarders. She mended Logan's gear, helped him organize his supplies, and slowly began to put on weight as regular meals filled out her too thin frame. Logan found excuses to delay his return to the mountains, telling himself he needed to make one more trip to the trading post, order one more set of supplies, finish one more task before he could leave. The truth, which he was increasingly unable to deny, was that he did not want to leave Kate. Every day spent in her company made the thought of months alone in his mountain cabin less appealing. They fell into the habit of taking evening walks together after dinner, strolling through the quieter streets of Fort Kearny while the sun set in spectacular displays of orange and gold. Logan pointed out constellations as stars emerged, teaching Kate the names his father had taught him as a boy. Kate told stories from her childhood, sharing memories of happier times before loss and hardship reshaped her world. On the sixth evening of such walks, they found themselves at the edge of town where buildings gave way to open prairie. The land stretched endlessly toward the horizon, grass rippling in the wind like waves on an ocean. Kate stood silently, breathing in the vastness, feeling small and yet somehow part of something larger than herself. "What are you thinking?" Logan asked, standing close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his large frame. "I am thinking that I understand why you love the mountains," Kate said quietly. "Standing here, seeing all this space, it makes the small concerns of town life seem insignificant. There is something freeing about remembering how big the world is, how many possibilities exist beyond the narrow confines we create for ourselves." Logan turned to face her, his weathered features serious in the fading light. "Kate, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you respond." Kate's heart raced, sensing the importance of whatever he was about to say. "All right, I'm listening." "My week is up. I should have left for the mountains 3 days ago to prepare for winter, but I keep finding reasons to stay because the truth is I do not want to leave you. I know we have only known each other for a short time. I know I am not much of a catch, just a rough mountain man with a primitive cabin and a hard life to offer. But I cannot stop thinking about what it would be like to have you with me, to come home each day to your voice and your smile instead of empty silence." He paused, gathering his courage. "I'm asking if you would consider coming with me to the mountains, Kate. Not as hired help or obligation, but as my wife if you would have me. I know it is fast, I know I should court you properly with flowers and sweet words, but winter is coming, and if I do not leave soon, I will be trapped here until spring. I cannot bear the thought of leaving you behind, and I cannot in good conscience ask you to journey with me without the protection of marriage." Kate stared at him, her mind reeling from the unexpected proposal. Marriage. To Logan. To this man who had shown her more kindness and respect in 1 week than she had received in the past year. Her practical side screamed warnings about the speed of this development, the rashness of such a decision. But her heart, the part of her that had been closed off and defensive for so long, whispered different counsel. Logan had seen her at her lowest and treated her with dignity. He had asked nothing of her but honest work for honest pay. He had defended her reputation to townsmen and given her his own room without expecting anything in return. In his presence, she felt safe for the first time since her mother died, protected not just physically but emotionally as well. "Say something," Logan prompted when the silence stretched too long. "If your answer is no, I will understand. I will make sure you are provided for here before I leave, but please tell me what you are thinking." "I'm thinking this is crazy," Kate admitted, her voice trembling. "I am thinking we barely know each other, that marriage is serious and permanent, that I should be more cautious and sensible. But I am also thinking that you are the first person in so long who has made me feel like I matter, like I have value beyond what I can do or provide. When I am with you, I feel like myself again instead of the broken, desperate thing I had become." She stepped closer to him, tilting her head back to meet his eyes in the dimming light. "I'm also thinking that the safe, sensible path has brought me nothing but pain and loss. Maybe it is time to take a risk on something that feels right, even if it defies logic." Logan's breath caught, hope flaring in his dark eyes. "Are you saying yes?" I am saying yes, Logan Carmichael. I will marry you. I will go with you to the mountains and see what kind of life we can build together. I am terrified and uncertain and probably foolish, but I'm saying yes. Logan let out a sound that was half laugh, half relieved exhale. His hands came up to cup Kate's face gently, his calloused thumbs brushing across her cheekbones with surprising tenderness. You will not regret this, Kate. I swear to you, I will spend every day proving I am worthy of your trust. Then he lowered his head and kissed her, a gentle press of lips that spoke of promise and new beginnings rather than demanding passion. Kate's hands came up to rest on his broad chest, feeling his heart pounding beneath her palms as rapidly as her own. The kiss deepened slightly, Logan's arms wrapping around her to pull her close against his powerful body, and Kate felt something inside her shift and settle, as if pieces of herself that had been scattered were finally coming back together. When they broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, Logan rested his forehead against Kate's. We should get married tomorrow. I know it is fast, but if we are doing this, we should do it properly before we leave town. Tomorrow, Kate agreed, dizzy with the speed of events, but certain in her decision. How do we arrange that? Leave it to me. Fort Kearny has a traveling preacher who comes through regularly. I will find him tonight and make arrangements. You just need to show up and say the words that will make you mine. They walked back to the boarding house hand in hand, Kate feeling simultaneously exhilarated and terrified by the commitment she had just made. Mrs. Henderson took one look at their joined hands and linked expressions and broke into a wide smile. Well, it is about time, the older woman declared. I have been watching you two dance around each other all week. When is the wedding? Tomorrow, if we can arrange it, Logan said. Will you stand witness for us, Mrs. Henderson? It would mean a great deal to have you there. I would be honored, Mrs. Henderson replied, her eyes growing suspiciously moist. That girl needs some happiness in her life, and you are a good man, Logan Carmichael. You will take care of each other. Logan found the preacher that evening at the small church that served Fort Kearny and the surrounding settlements. Reverend Matthews was a kind-faced man in his 50s who agreed to perform the ceremony the following afternoon. Logan also stopped at the general store and used some of his remaining funds to purchase a simple gold band for Kate, having it sized by the local silversmith who worked late into the evening to complete the task. Kate spent the morning in a daze, trying on the nicest of her new dresses while Mrs. Henderson fussed over her hair and offered advice about marriage that ranged from practical to surprisingly frank. The older woman had been married for 30 years before her husband's death 5 years earlier, and she spoke about love with the wisdom of someone who had lived it through good times and bad. Marriage is work, dear Mrs. Henderson said as she pinned Kate's hair into an elegant updo. It is choosing each other every day, even when that choice is difficult. But when you find someone who sees all of you, the good and the bad and the broken pieces, and chooses to love you anyway, that is something precious, something worth fighting for. I am scared, Kate admitted. What if I am making a terrible mistake? What if I cannot adapt to mountain life? What if Logan realizes he made a poor choice and regrets bringing me? Mrs. Henderson turned Kate to face the mirror, her weathered hands resting on the younger woman's shoulders. Fear is natural when starting something new. But let me ask you this, child. When you look at Logan, what do you feel? Kate considered the question carefully, examining her own heart with ruthless honesty. Safe, she said finally. Protected. Like I could tell him my darkest secrets and he would not turn away. Like, maybe with him I could be happy again. Then you are not making a mistake, Mrs. Henderson said firmly. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, Kate. Whatever hardships you face in the mountains, you will face them together. That makes all the difference. The ceremony took place at 2 p.m. in the small church, with only Mrs. Henderson and the store owner Thompson as witnesses. Kate wore her green dress with a simple bouquet of wildflowers that Logan had ridden out to gather that morning. Logan had trimmed his hair and beard, though both were still longer than fashion dictated, and wore clean buckskin pants with a white shirt that stretched across his powerful shoulders. Reverend Matthews kept the service brief but meaningful, speaking about the sacred commitment of marriage and the importance of facing life's challenges as a unified team. When he prompted Logan to repeat his vows, the mountain man's voice was strong and certain. I, Logan Carmichael, take you, Katherine Grant, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to protect you, provide for you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. I will be faithful in prosperity and in hardship, in health and in sickness. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. Kate's voice trembled slightly as she repeated her own vows, but her words carried equal conviction. I, Katherine Grant, take you, Logan Carmichael, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to stand by your side through whatever comes, to be your partner and companion, to build a home and a life together. I will love you faithfully and true from this day until my last. Logan slid the simple gold band onto Kate's finger, his large hands surprisingly gentle. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Logan cupped Kate's face in his hands and kissed her with more passion than their first kiss had held, a claiming and a promise all at once. Kate rose on her toes to meet him, her hands fisting in his shirt, lost in the moment and the man who was now her husband. Mrs. Henderson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, while Thompson cleared his throat gruffly and muttered something about having dust in his eyes. The simple ceremony ended with signatures in the church record book, making the marriage legally binding in the eyes of both law and God. They celebrated with a wedding dinner at the boarding house, Mrs. Henderson having prepared a feast that included roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, and a cake she had baked specially for the occasion. The other boarders joined in the celebration, toasting the newlyweds with genuine warmth. For one evening, Kate felt like she belonged somewhere again, surrounded by people who wished her well. As night fell, Logan and Kate returned to the room that was now theirs by right of marriage. The space felt different now, charged with new significance and the awareness of shared futures. Kate stood by the window, nervously smoothing her dress while Logan lit the lamp and closed the door behind them. "Kate," Logan said softly, crossing to stand behind her. His hands settled on her shoulders, warm and steadying. "We do not have to do anything tonight if you are not ready. I meant what I said in my vows. I will be patient with you, give you whatever time you need." Kate turned in his arms, looking up at this man who had become her husband in such a short time. The lamplight cast shadows that emphasized the hard planes of his face, the strength in his jaw, and the unexpected gentleness in his eyes. She placed one hand over his heart, feeling it beat steadily beneath her palm. "I am ready," she said quietly. "I am scared. But I trust you, Logan. I want this. I want us." Logan's arms came around her, pulling her close against the solid wall of his chest. "I will be gentle," he promised, his lips brushing her temple. "I will take care of you, Kate, always." He kissed her slowly, taking his time, his hands moving with careful restraint as he helped her out of her dress. Kate's fingers trembled as she unbuttoned his shirt, revealing the muscled expanse of his chest marked with scars from years of mountain living. Each scar told a story of survival, of a hard life honestly lived, and Kate found herself tracing them gently with her fingertips. Logan shuddered at her touch, his control fraying but held in check by sheer will. He lifted her easily in his powerful arms and carried her to the bed, laying her down with a tenderness that belied his considerable strength. What followed was a joining that started gentle and grew increasingly passionate as Kate's initial nervousness gave way to response and then to eager participation. Logan proved as patient and attentive a lover as he had been a protector, attuned to Kate's reactions and careful not to overwhelm her. When they finally came together fully, Kate cried out not in pain but in surprised pleasure, clinging to Logan's broad shoulders as he moved above her with controlled power. The physical union sealed the emotional connection that had been building between them all week, binding them together in the most elemental way possible. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in the narrow bed, Logan's large body curved protectively around Kate's smaller frame. His calloused hand stroked her hair gently as their breathing slowly returned to normal. "Are you all right?" Logan asked, his voice rough with emotion. Kate turned in his arms to face him, her expression soft and open in the lamplight. "I am better than all right. I am happy, Logan, truly happy for the first time in so long I'd almost forgotten what it felt like." Logan pulled her closer, burying his face in her hair. "I never thought I would have this," he admitted quietly. "A wife, a partner, someone who makes coming home mean something. Thank you for taking a chance on a rough mountain man who had nothing to offer but a hard life and a willing heart. You offered me everything that matters, Kate corrected, her arms tightening around him. Safety, respect, the chance to be valued for who I am rather than what I can provide. That is worth more than gold or comfort, Logan. They talked quietly into the night, making plans for their journey to the mountains and sharing more of their histories. Logan described his cabin in detail, the surrounding valley, the trap lines he maintained, and the challenges they would face in the coming winter. Kate listened intently, asking questions and beginning to form a mental picture of the life they would build together. I will teach you everything you need to know to survive up there, Logan promised. How to recognize dangerous weather, how to preserve food, how to shoot and trap if needed. You will be my partner in all things, Kate, not just a dependent to be sheltered. I want that, Kate said firmly. I want to be useful, to contribute to our survival. Teach me everything, Logan. Do not hold back because you think I am too delicate. I am stronger than I look. Logan smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I know you are. You survived things that would have broken weaker people. But I will still protect you whenever I can, Kate. That is just who I am. They rose early the next morning and spent the day preparing for their departure. Logan loaded his supplies onto 2 pack horses while Kate said goodbye to Mrs. Henderson and the few people in town who had shown her kindness. The older woman hugged Kate tightly, pressing a small package into her hands. Some herbs and recipes that might come in handy in the mountains, Mrs. Henderson explained, her eyes damp. You write to me when you can, child. Let me know you are safe and happy. I will, Kate promised, her own tears threatening to fall. Thank you for everything, Mrs. Henderson. You were kind to me when I needed it most. The journey to Logan's mountain cabin took 3 days of steady travel, heading west and then north into increasingly rugged terrain. Kate rode the mare Logan had purchased for her, a gentle bay with steady feet and a calm temperament. They camped under the stars at night, Logan teaching Kate how to build a proper fire and cook over open flames. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the air grew thinner and cooler, carrying the crisp scent of pine and the promise of coming winter. Kate found herself falling in love not just with Logan, but with the wild beauty of the landscape. The towering peaks crowned with snow, the meadows still green despite the late season, the crystal-clear streams that rushed down from glacial sources above. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, they crested a ridge, and Logan pointed down into a sheltered valley. There, he said, pride evident in his voice. That is home. Kate looked down at the small cabin nestled among pines near a stream. Smoke rose from the stone chimney, and she realized someone must have been maintaining the place in Logan's absence. As if reading her thoughts, Logan explained, I have a friend who checks on the cabin when I'm gone. Trapper named Samuel, who has his own place about 5 miles north. He probably made sure everything was secure and left supplies inside. The cabin proved larger than Kate had expected, with solid log walls and a well-constructed roof. Inside, there was one large room with the stone fireplace dominating one wall, a sleeping area with a real bed frame and mattress, a table with chairs and plenty of storage for supplies. A smaller room off the back held additional provisions and Logan's trapping equipment. Kate walked slowly around the space, running her hands over the rough-hewn furniture Logan had built himself. It was primitive compared to Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, but clean and well-maintained, with an atmosphere of solid competence. What do you think? Logan asked, watching her reaction carefully. Can you be happy here? Kate turned to face him, her expression thoughtful. It will take adjustment, she said honestly. But yes, Logan, I can be happy here. With you, I can be happy anywhere. Relief flooded Logan's features, and he crossed the room in 2 long strides to sweep Kate into his arms. I will add onto the cabin, he promised. Build you a better kitchen area, maybe a separate room for bathing. Whatever you need to make this feel like home. Right now, all I need is you, Kate said, pulling his head down for a kiss. We will figure out the rest as we go. They spent the next few weeks preparing for winter in earnest. Logan taught Kate how to preserve meat by smoking and salting, how to recognize edible plants and medicinal herbs, how to maintain the trap lines and skin pelts. Kate proved an apt student, her quick mind and determined spirit allowing her to master skills in weeks that normally took months to learn. She also brought her own expertise to their partnership, improving their meals dramatically and organizing the cabin's storage with efficient precision. She made curtains for the windows from fabric Logan had stored away, sewed warm clothing from pelts and leather, and began keeping a detailed journal of their daily life and the surrounding area's plants and wildlife. Samuel, the friend who had been checking on the cabin, stopped by one afternoon with his own wife, Mary, in tow. The couple had been living in the mountains for 15 years, and Mary was delighted to have another woman within visiting distance. She took Kate under her wing, teaching her additional survival skills and sharing hard-won knowledge about mountain living. "Most women cannot handle the isolation," Mary confided during one visit while the men checked trap lines together. "They get lonely, depressed, sometimes desperate to return to civilization. But you have something different about you, Kate, a strength that goes bone deep." "I had to develop strength," Kate explained. "Life gave me no choice in the matter. But here with Logan, I am learning that strength can coexist with happiness, that I do not have to be constantly fighting just to survive." "That is the gift of a good partner," Mary agreed. "Someone who makes the hard parts more bearable and the good parts even better." The first serious snow came in late October, blanketing the valley in white and confirming that they had prepared just in time. Kate stood at the cabin window watching the flakes fall, Logan's arms wrapped around her from behind, and felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. "Are you scared?" Logan asked, his breath warm against her ear. "No," Kate answered truthfully. "I'm with you. What is there to be scared of?" The winter proved as harsh as Logan had warned, with temperatures dropping far below freezing and snow piling deep enough to make travel difficult. But inside the cabin, with the fire burning and their supplies well stocked, Kate and Logan created a world of warmth and intimacy. They spent long evenings talking, reading from the small collection of books Logan had accumulated over the years, playing cards and dice games. Logan taught Kate to carve wood, and she surprised him by having a natural talent for it. She made wooden spoons and bowls, small decorative figures of animals she saw around the valley. Their physical relationship deepened as well, both of them learning the other's preferences and responses. Logan continued to be a tender and attentive lover, his powerful body capable of surprising gentleness. Kate grew more confident in her own desires, learning to initiate intimacy and express what she wanted. By the time spring began to melt the snow, Kate had been living in the mountains for 5 months and could no longer imagine any other life. She had grown strong from the physical work, her body lean and capable. Her face had lost the gaunt, desperate look of her Fort Kearny days, replaced by healthy color and the glow of genuine happiness. She had also begun to suspect she might be pregnant, though she kept the suspicion to herself until she was more certain. Her monthly courses had stopped, and she experienced occasional morning nausea that passed quickly. The signs were unmistakable to someone who had helped care for pregnant neighbors in her youth. Logan noticed the changes, of course. He was too observant not to see that Kate was acting differently, more protective of herself, more cautious about heavy lifting. One evening in early April, as they sat by the fire after dinner, he finally asked directly, "Kate, are you with child?" Kate looked up from the mending in her lap, meeting his eyes steadily. "I think so, yes. I've not been certain until recently, but all the signs are there. How do you feel about that?" Logan's expression transformed, wonder and joy breaking across his weathered features like sunrise. "How do I feel? Kate, I feel like the luckiest man alive. A wife I love beyond measure, and now a child on the way. I never thought I would have even one of those things, let alone both." He moved from his chair to kneel beside Kate's, taking her hands carefully in his. "Are you happy about it? Is this something you want?" "Yes," Kate said, tears of happiness spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, Logan, I want your child. I want our family. I want everything we are building together." Logan pulled her into his arms, holding her with a careful tenderness that acknowledged the precious life she carried. "I will take care of you," he promised. "Both of you, whatever you need. Whatever it takes, you will have it." True to his word, Logan became even more protective as Kate's pregnancy progressed. He took over the heavier tasks around the cabin, insisted she rest more, and made the journey down to the nearest settlement to bring back a midwife named Mrs. Patterson, who agreed to stay with them as Kate's due date approached. Samuel and Mary also visited more frequently, Mary sharing her own experiences with pregnancy and childbirth in the mountains. She had delivered 3 healthy children in their remote cabin, and her practical advice helped ease some of Kate's anxieties about giving birth far from doctors and hospitals. "Women have been having babies in far worse conditions than this for thousands of years," Mary reminded Kate during one visit. "Your body knows what to do. You just need to trust it and have good people around to support you." As summer gave way to early fall, Kate grew large with child, her belly swelling with the life growing within. Logan treated her like precious porcelain, hovering anxiously and jumping to fulfill her every need before she even voiced it. Kate found his attentiveness endearing even when it bordered on excessive. "Logan, I am pregnant, not dying," she reminded him with gentle exasperation one afternoon when he tried to prevent her from gathering vegetables from their small garden. "I need to stay active. Mrs. Patterson said so." "I know," Logan admitted, running a hand through his long hair in frustration. "I just cannot help worrying. You and this baby are everything to me, Kate. The thought of something going wrong terrifies me." Kate cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Nothing's going to go wrong. I'm healthy and strong. Our baby is active and growing well. Have faith, Logan. We are going to be fine." Labor began on a crisp morning in mid-September, almost exactly a year after Kate had been thrown into the street in Fort Kearny. The contractions started gently, giving Kate time to alert Mrs. Patterson and make final preparations. Logan hovered anxiously until the midwife firmly ordered him outside to chop wood or perform some other task that would keep him occupied. "First babies take time," Mrs. Patterson told him. "You will just work yourself into a state pacing around in here. Go be useful somewhere else, and I will call you when things progress." The labor lasted through the afternoon and into evening, Kate's cries of pain causing Logan to abandon his assigned tasks and return to hover near the cabin door. Samuel arrived at some point to keep him company, the 2 men sitting on the porch in tense silence while the sounds from inside told their own story. As darkness fell, Kate's cries reached a crescendo and then suddenly transformed into a different sound altogether, the thin wail of a newborn baby. Logan was on his feet instantly, bursting through the door to find Mrs. Patterson cleaning a tiny, squalling infant while Kate lay exhausted but smiling on the bed. "You have a son," Mrs. Patterson announced, wrapping the baby in clean cloth and handing the bundle to Logan. "A healthy, strong, lunged boy." Logan stared down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and absolutely perfect, and felt something inside his chest crack wide open. Tears tracked down his weathered cheeks unashamedly as he carried his son to Kate's side. "Look what we made," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Kate, he is beautiful." Kate reached up to touch the baby's tiny hand, her own eyes wet with tears. "He has your nose," she observed with a tired laugh, "and your temper, judging by how loudly he is complaining." They named him Liam, after Logan's father, who had died never knowing his son would find happiness and family in the mountains he had fled to in grief. Liam proved to be a healthy, hungry baby who kept them exhausted but deeply happy through his first months of life. Logan turned out to be a natural father, patient with the baby's crying and careful with his considerable strength when holding the tiny body. He built a beautiful cradle from pine and aspen, carved with intricate animal designs that Kate declared too lovely to use for everyday purposes. Logan built a second, plainer cradle for daily use and hung the carved one over their bed. Kate recovered quickly from the birth, her body strong from months of mountain living. By the time Liam was 2 months old, she was back to most of her regular tasks, though Logan still took over the heaviest work without being asked. They settled into the rhythms of family life, their days structured around Liam's needs and the demands of mountain survival. Kate found motherhood suited her. The fierce, protective love she felt for her son, matched only by her love for the husband who had saved her life and given her a new one. When Liam was 6 months old, they made the journey down to Fort Kearny for supplies and to visit Mrs. Henderson. The older woman wept with joy at seeing Kate so healthy and happy, and she showered the baby with gifts and attention. "I knew," Mrs. Henderson said, holding Liam and rocking him gently. "I knew from the moment I saw you two together that this would work out. You were meant for each other, as surely as the sun is meant to rise." They spent 3 days in town, enduring the curious looks of townspeople who remembered Kate's desperate circumstances a year earlier. But now, dressed in sturdy mountain clothing and glowing with health and happiness, she bore little resemblance to the broken girl who had been thrown into the street. She met their stares with calm confidence, Logan's solid presence beside her a constant source of strength. On their last evening in town, they attended a community dance at the church. Kate had not danced in years, and Logan admitted he had never been much for dancing even in his youth. But they joined the other couples on the floor anyway, Logan's large hands gentle as he guided Kate through the simple steps. "Thank you," Kate said quietly as they moved together to the music. "For what?" Logan asked, looking down at her with undisguised adoration. "For seeing me that day, for helping me when you could have walked away, for giving me a life I never dreamed I could have." Logan pulled her closer, his voice rough with emotion. "Thank you for saying yes, for trusting me enough to take a chance on a hard life in the mountains, for giving me Liam, for making me happier than I ever thought possible. You saved me just as much as I saved you, Kate. Maybe more." They returned to the mountains with fresh supplies and renewed appreciation for the life they had built. The years passed in a pattern of seasons, each winter testing their resilience and each spring reaffirming their commitment to each other and their chosen life. Liam grew into a sturdy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes, equally at home tracking animals with Logan or helping Kate tend their expanded garden. When he was 3, Kate gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Lily, whose arrival brought new joy to their mountain home. 2 years later, another son joined the family, named Thomas after Kate's grandfather. Their cabin expanded with each child, Logan building additions and improvements until it was a proper home rather than a primitive shelter. Samuel and Mary became like family, their own children growing up alongside Logan and Kate's. The two families helped each other through difficulties, celebrated successes together, and created a small community of mountain dwellers who looked out for one another. Kate never forgot where she had come from, the desperate woman thrown into the street with nowhere to turn. But that past life seemed distant now, belonging to a different person entirely. The woman she had become, under Logan's steadfast love and the mountain's harsh tutelage, bore little resemblance to that frightened girl. She taught all 3 children to read and write, using the books Logan purchased on their annual trips to Fort Kearny and others they ordered from catalogs. She kept detailed journals of their life, hoping someday her children and grandchildren might appreciate the story of how their family began. Logan remained the protective, loving husband he had been from the first day, though age and experience had weathered him further. His hair grew more gray with each passing year, his face more lined, but his strength remained formidable, and his love for Kate never wavered. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Logan took Kate to a high meadow he had discovered years earlier, but never shown anyone. They left the children with Mary and Samuel for the night and rode up into the mountains, climbing above the tree line to a place where wildflowers carpeted the ground in every color imaginable. "I found this place the summer after we married," Logan explained as they stood together in the meadow, the mountains rising majestically around them. "I thought about bringing you then, but the timing never seemed right. Now, with 10 years behind us and hopefully many more ahead, it feels appropriate." Kate turned in a slow circle, taking in the breathtaking beauty. "It is magnificent, Logan. Thank you for sharing it with me." "Everything I have, everything I am, I share with you," Logan said simply. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with the passion and tenderness that had never dimmed despite a decade of marriage. "I love you, Kate, more now than the day we married, which I would not have thought possible then." "I love you too," Kate replied, her arms around his neck. "You gave me everything, Logan. A home, a family, a life worth living. I will spend every day trying to deserve the gift you gave me." "You deserve everything good this world has to offer," Logan said firmly. "Never doubt that, Kate. Never forget your own worth." They spent the night in the meadow under the stars, talking and making love and simply being together away from the demands of daily life. It was a gift they gave themselves rarely, but treasured completely whenever it could be arranged. As they rode back down to the cabin the next morning, Kate reflected on the improbable journey that had brought her to this place. If someone had told her during those desperate weeks in Fort Kearny that she would find such happiness, such completeness, she never would have believed them. But Logan had shown her that miracles could happen, that kindness existed even in harsh places, that love could bloom in unexpected circumstances. He had seen her at her lowest moment and offered his hand without hesitation or conditions. In doing so, he had saved not just her life, but her faith in humanity and her ability to trust again. The children greeted them enthusiastically when they returned, Liam reporting that they had been very good for Mary and Samuel. Lily clung to Kate's skirts while Thomas demanded to be picked up by Logan, and the cabin rang with laughter and the cheerful chaos of family life. Years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and joys. The children grew, developing distinct personalities and talents. Liam showed his father's aptitude for mountain living, while Lily inherited Kate's love of books and learning. Thomas proved to be the most social of the three, charming everyone he met with his easy smile and friendly nature. Kate's journal filled volume after volume, documenting the daily details of their life along with her reflections on marriage, motherhood, and the growth that came from building a life in such demanding circumstances. She wrote honestly about the difficulties alongside the triumphs, creating a record that was truthful rather than idealized. Logan continued trapping and hunting, providing the income that allowed them to purchase necessary supplies and even some small luxuries. He took immense pride in being able to give his family a comfortable life, proving that a man could provide well for those he loved through honest work and careful planning. When Liam turned 15, Logan began teaching him the deeper skills of mountain trapping, preparing to eventually pass on the business to his son. But he also encouraged the boy to pursue education, arranging for correspondence courses that would give Liam options beyond the mountains if he chose to take them. "The world is changing," Logan told Kate one evening, as they watched the sunset paint the mountains in shades of purple and gold. "By the time our children are grown, there might be fewer places for mountain men like me. I want them to have choices, to be able to make their own way however they see fit." "You are a wise father," Kate said, leaning against his solid shoulder. "You give them roots, but also wings. That is the greatest gift a parent can offer." Lily showed an interest in medicine after helping Mary through a difficult illness one winter. Kate encouraged her daughter's fascination, ordering medical texts and teaching her everything she could about herbs and healing. It became clear that Lily would likely choose to pursue further education, perhaps even becoming a doctor, in a time when such options were finally opening to women. Thomas remained undecided about his future, content to be a child for now, helping around the cabin and playing with the growing number of children in their small mountain community. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Logan surprised Kate with a trip back to Fort Kearny. They had not visited in several years, the children now old enough to be left with Samuel and Mary for an extended period. The town had changed significantly, growing larger and more prosperous with the expansion of the railroad. Mrs. Henderson had passed away 2 years earlier, her boarding house now run by a younger woman who knew nothing of Kate and Logan's history. They visited Mrs. Henderson's grave in the small cemetery behind the church, Kate placing wildflowers on the headstone and saying a prayer of gratitude for the woman who had shown her kindness when she needed it most. "She was the first person beside you who made me feel like I mattered," Kate said quietly, her hand in Logan's. "I never got to properly thank her for that." "She knew," Logan assured her. "Every time we visited with the children, every time she saw how happy you were, that was thanks enough." They spent several days in town, attending another community dance and marveling at how much had changed in 2 decades. The saloon where Kate had worked still stood, though under new ownership. Logan deliberately avoided walking past it, not wanting to remind Kate of those desperate times. But Kate insisted on going there, standing in front of the building where she had been thrown into the street 20 years earlier. Logan stood beside her, ready to support whatever emotions arose, but Kate's expression remained peaceful. "I am not that person anymore," she said quietly. "That frightened, desperate girl died the day you picked her up and offered her your hand. What rose in her place was someone stronger, someone capable of building a good life from nothing. I'm grateful for her struggle because it led me to you." Logan wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "And I'm grateful every day that I was there to see you, to help you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Kate Carmichael." They returned to the mountains renewed and confirmed in their choices. The children were thriving, growing into capable young adults who carried the best qualities of both parents. The cabin was warm and secure, their supplies plentiful, their life together strong and fulfilling. As Kate approached her 45th birthday, she found herself reflecting on the woman she had become. The hardships she had endured in her early 20s had shaped her, but not broken her. Logan's love had given her the safety and space to heal those wounds and grow into her full potential. She taught the local children alongside her own, establishing a small school in their cabin during winter months. She wrote articles about mountain living that were published in Eastern magazines, earning both money and recognition for her vivid descriptions of frontier life. Logan, now in his 50s, remained vital and strong, though he moved with the stiffness that came from years of hard physical labor in harsh conditions. He still trapped and hunted, but increasingly partnered with Liam as his son took on more responsibility for the family business. Their love had not diminished with time or familiarity. If anything, it had grown deeper, more resilient, tempered by decades of facing challenges together and emerging stronger on the other side. Lily eventually left the mountains to pursue medical training in Chicago, her parents supporting her ambition, even though it meant separation. She returned each summer, bringing new knowledge and energy, becoming the closest thing to a doctor their mountain community had ever had. Thomas surprised everyone by developing a talent for blacksmithing after apprenticing with a traveling smith who passed through one summer. He set up his own small forge near the cabin, serving the needs of trappers and settlers scattered throughout the region. Liam married a young woman named Ruth, whose family had settled 2 valleys over, and they built their own cabin within sight of Logan and Kate's home. The arrival of grandchildren brought new joy, the cycle of family continuing into another generation. Kate held her first grandchild, a girl named Katherine, after her, and felt the circle complete itself. From desperate poverty and abandonment to this, a life so full of love and family that her heart could barely contain it all. "We built something good," she said to Logan one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, their grandchildren playing in the yard while their own children prepared dinner inside. "Against all odds, we built something lasting and true." Logan took her hand, his calloused fingers interlacing with hers in a gesture as familiar as breathing. "We built it together," he corrected gently. "Every nail, every stone, every memory and moment, together, Kate. That is what made it work." As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, Kate leaned her head on Logan's shoulder and closed her eyes, feeling completely at peace. The mountain man who had watched them throw her into the street and picked her up with such unexpected gentleness had given her everything she never knew she needed. A life of purpose and meaning. A family built on love and respect. The strength that came from overcoming hardship and emerging triumphant on the other side. Most importantly, he had given her the knowledge that she was worthy of being loved, cherished, and protected. Their story, which had begun with such desperation and pain, had transformed into something beautiful. It was a testament to the power of kindness, the healing that came from genuine love, and the strength of 2 people committed to building a life together no matter what challenges arose. The mountains stood eternal around them, silent witnesses to the family that had put down roots in the high valley. Winter would come again, as it always did, bringing cold and hardship. But inside the sturdy cabin with its blazing fire and walls filled with love and laughter, the Carmichael family would endure and thrive, their story continuing into future generations. Kate had been saved by a mountain man with kind eyes and a gentle heart beneath his rough exterior. But in truth, they had saved each other, 2 wounded souls finding healing and wholeness in their unlikely partnership. As darkness fell completely, and Logan guided her inside to join their family for the evening meal, Kate sent up a silent prayer of gratitude for the day she had been thrown into the street and Logan Carmichael had been there to pick her up. That moment of kindness had changed everything, transforming 2 solitary lives into something far greater than the sum of their parts. Their love story, born from desperation and nurtured through countless challenges, stood as proof that sometimes the best things in life came from the most unexpected places. All it took was someone willing to extend their hand and someone else brave enough to reach back and hold on tight. Together, they had built a legacy that would endure long after they were gone, a testament to the transformative power of love, commitment, and the choice to see the worth in another human being when the world had turned away. And in the end, that was the greatest gift of all.